Hello and welcome. This is Jenn T, Grace, founder of Publish Your Purpose. I am here with Ellen R.V. Smith talking about your book, Memoirs of a Suburban Troublemaker. How's it going, Ellen?
Pretty well. I'm really excited.
I can see like the excitement in your eyes.
Yeah, it could be a hot flash coming, but it's probably
it's relatable, if nothing else. I feel like no one talks about them enough.
Yeah, I do.
Yes, here we go. So your book is called Memoirs of a Suburban Troublemaker. Since the day you and I first had our first conversation, I was like, I am in love with this whole concept.
Yeah.
Because a suburban troublemaker feels so relatable to many of us, potentially. Maybe there's maybe you yourself were not a troublemaker, but you know someone who was. So I think there's like a universalness to it. So I'm curious, like what made you A, decide to write this, and B, give it that title?
Okay. So I think I wanted to share information about all of the mistakes, the many, many mistakes that I've made, because I wanted people like me to feel less alone in the world. And I wanted to give all the rebellious kids or, kids that come from a broken home, hope for a better tomorrow. And I'm hoping that the transgression of my life, being a troublemaker as a kid, and the progression of me becoming a contributing member of society as an adult will resonate with people and give people, something to look forward to. But I also believe that sharing my most embarrassing moments, I didn't share all of them. I wanted to keep some to myself. But I think they'll entertain people. And Reston itself, Reston, Virginia, the suburb that I grew up in, is inspiring in itself. It was created in 1964, before the Civil Rights Act, before Virginia versus Loving, before any fair housing laws, as a place that's inclusive for all. So it's the first open and integrated community in Virginia, which was considered a red or Confederate state. So I was privileged to meet the founder of Reston, Robert E. Simon, or Bob Simon. And I'm super privileged to have been able to have the time to write this book. But I'm passionate about my responsibility to encourage women to be themselves and to stand up for each other. And the art of writing without lecturing is really difficult. I hope it worked. Especially since I'm not truly a fully evolved human yet. But I've definitely come a long way, and I'm hoping that comes through in my writing.
I think there's like some beautiful self-awareness around that too, to be like, I'm not perfect. I'm like recovering still.
Yeah, we're all a work in progress. I like to say that to my kids, especially.
Yeah, we sure are. And perfection is not attainable. So we got to stop even trying, right? I think that our society is always striving for perfection, and that's
impossible.
Yeah. I think it just sets us all up for failure. Yeah. When we're looking at like being a troublemaker and troublemaking, is there some aspect of it? Because I know you just had said like you're sharing a lot of embarrassing stories, which who doesn't love a book that is filled with embarrassment? Like that is like, a reader's like, ooh, I can't wait to dive in because they feel like they're a voyeur into your life. But like, is there certain aspects of that, do you think, that are going to resonate more with your readers than maybe others?
Yeah, I mean, like kids that are labeled a troublemaker, they can still make something of themselves. So I think people are going to look for strategies about how to, hone that skill of being a disruptor, which is actually a sought out attribute in the workforce today, and being able to become successful. So I think that's what, maybe parents are going to be looking for if they have a kid that's a troublemaker. I mean, I think kids themselves, it's not probably appropriate for, the elementary school kids, but adolescents and above, this is going to make them feel like there's somebody out there that knows them. And I was talking to my PM Chris the other day, and he's like, it was nice to read the younger parts of your memoir because, little boys always want to know what's in the head of little girls. And this definitely tells it all.
Nice.
And it goes all the way throughout my life of, what it's like being, someone like me in a suburb who, got into a lot of trouble, was very angry about my parents' divorce, and was able to kind of, turn all of the experiences that I had into what happened for me, to frame it into a positive thing as opposed to what happened to me as a victim. So.
Yeah, there's a lot of reframing that I think we do as adults, right? Because like we have the benefit of clarity, time, space, context to be like, oh, this wasn't happening to me, but it was for me. So I love that there's kind of like a reframe there. Because like you said, like when you're labeled as a troublemaker, it's a hard label, I would imagine, to shake if that's something that you've been like identified as and people have said consistently and repeatedly to you.
Yeah. And I'm still like, when you're kids, you get labeled for, the role that you have in the family at that time, and that never goes away. So I am still the troublemaker in my family.
There's got to be one, and you were it.
Yes, that's right.
When we first started working together, we were having conversations of how there's such a lack of the word compassion is what popped in my head. It's not what we had said at the time, but just a lack of awareness to the kid, like labeling a kid as a troublemaker, whether you're directly saying it to their face or whether you're saying it behind their back, like the kids overhearing it. So I love, and I want to just kind of plug the fact that this book is something where you can come into a school system, for example, for high school students and come in and just kind of show them, hey, you can be labeled a troublemaker and still see success in your life. So I just want to kind of like make that known for anyone who might be kind of tuning in to say, yeah, you can have Ellen come in here and be an outside voice, because you might have a guidance counselor in high school saying like, you'll be fine. There's something bigger for you. There's a place for you. But it's different than actually seeing it from the person who wrote the book about the topic.
Yeah. Sign me up. I would love to do something like that. I think that would be amazing. And I've done public speaking before professionally. And, I'm pretty comfortable with it, but it's usually about, like recruiting or, professional things. So I would love to talk about my own experiences in a public setting.
Yeah. I just think you can be such an inspiration to young people, because I feel like it stinks getting that label, and then you gotta navigate life and figure out, okay, how do I get rid of this label? And then, like you said, if it's a family label, you're just stuck with it, whether you've reformed yourself or not.
Exactly.
So when you think about, like, as you were going through your troublemaking times, when you were younger, or even as a young adult, whatever age range, did you always want to write your story down and put it into a book? Did you always want to be an author? Was being a writer something you dreamed of? Like, what's that landscape look like?
So it's funny because Fairfax County, which is where Reston is supposed to be one of the best school systems in the country. It is. But I definitely slipped through the cracks. Like I didn't make very good grades. In the end, after I got kicked out of high school, I made straight A's because I wanted to get into college, but I'm shocked that I got in. My SAT scores were horrible. I was a horrible test taker. I didn't know how to take notes. Essentially, I didn't know how to learn. So I definitely feel like I fell through the cracks. And in college, I failed out my freshman year. I couldn't pass basic classes. I never was able to pass math. So I took English at Northern Virginia Community College just so I could pass. And the progression of being, what I consider to be stupid, and then professionally being the person who's auditing the docs that go, all of the documentation that went across my manager's desk to go up the chain. I was the person writing them or editing them. So that definitely gave me a lot of confidence to think that I could write something meaningful. But I always kept journals and calendars. And I thought, someday maybe I'll write a book. That's always on the back of my head. And I think everybody, has a story. And I think everybody wants to write a book. One of the reasons why I was keeping these journals was essentially to keep score, and they say you shouldn't write a memoir for revenge, but I definitely wanted to set the record straight about why I was kicked out of high school. I mean, I was involved in so many fights. And it's kind of like I was channeling Lord's yellow flicker beat from the Hunger Games, which there's a couple references in my book where she says, and I'm locking up everyone that ever laid a finger on me.
Yes. Love a good Hunger Games reference.
Yeah.
That's so it's interesting. I wish more people had the foresight to kind of write things down in the moment, knowing or anticipating maybe I'll do something with this later. So I love that that's kind of part of this for you, is that you were saying like maybe I'll do something with it, and now here we are and you actually did something with it. So
Yeah.
kudos for actually like following that through.
Yeah, it wasn't easy. But I'm glad I did it. I'm really excited.
Mm-hmm. And when we look at, so you're saying like you always kind of knew that you would do something with the writing, and then I love that you're kind of referencing the fact that curriculum in education is not designed for anyone that is not 100, like right in the middle of the bell curve, like the average person. Like if you need a little extra help or you need a little no help, the system's not designed for you. And so it's nice to see like you talking about how like once you found a place where you could actually learn in a way that made sense to you, suddenly you were fine, right? So I'm curious, like when you were thinking about the writing and thinking like journaling, what role did music play in that too? Because I know that music is absolutely woven throughout the book from kind of like from beginning to end. And so I imagine that had to be some kind of part of coping or catharsis or something.
Absolutely. Yeah, because I didn't feel like I could pass math classes. I mean, basically what happened was when my parents were getting a divorce, I was 8, and it was a very pivotal moment in my development. And I remember being in math class and just hating it and thinking, all right, how can I get out of this? And so I would go to my counselor and say, my parents are getting a divorce. I need to talk about it. Every day I would miss math. And I think I missed all of the foundations. Plus I had a learning disability that was undiagnosed, ADHD, until I was close to being a teenager. Because it wasn't really that well known at the time. It was kind of a newer topic. So yeah. I always had confidence in music ever since I got selected for, the 4th grade concert choir, regional concert choir. And it was like, finally, I'm good at something, right? So I minored in music, and I talk about my failed dreams of not becoming a rock star, despite years and years of trying. But I think songs and lyrics can capture more emotion in poetry and in lyrics than spelling out a story or spelling out a specific feeling. So I think that's why I wanted to reference music. And also, initially, when I was writing the book, I was writing the book to pictures of my life so that I could, have that backup, data to back up that this actually happened. And I had picked out like lyrics that match the content of the chapters, which were taken out for copyright purposes. But also because I just thought it was able to capture what I was really wanting to say. And, end of the line, I'd love for this to become a Netflix series. And if so, I've already got the soundtrack picked up.
Love it. I can almost see you using the soundtrack of like walking out on stage of like, like you're doing some kind of motivational speaking, or maybe you're just walking into a bookstore of 50 people who are waiting to hear, and you have like your selected music of you walking out to. What is the one song that if I were to have like hit play on it right now, you'd be like, that's my jam. This is my song all day long.
Oh man. Well, I talk about how when I got promoted at AWS, I listened to Boss Bitch by Doja Cat on repeat. But there's another song called Millions, and I don't know I don't know who the artist is, but it's a really good song. I think that would be what I would want to walk out to.
Yes, I think that should be a goal, is that you have a nice big like bookstore. Maybe it's your book launch party where you're walking out to that song.
That would be great. Yes.
All right, we're gonna manifest that into the universe.
I love it. You put it out there.
It's done.
Yep.
Make it happen. I love it. So switching. Okay, so we talked about kind of like you're the family troublemaker. So you haven't like given up that crown yet. We know that memoirs are difficult for family. We're difficult for anybody related to the author, because nobody wants to be written about in a book. And there's like some really famous quotes that are like, if you didn't want me to write about you, you should have behaved differently. Right. So there's like some really good quotes like that. I'm curious like how you've handled it in relation to your family and friends.
Yeah. I mean, people that are not in my family that I talk a lot of shit about, I changed their names. But the people in my family, it's funny because my friend Bahija, who's a major person in the story, major character, when I was telling her and interviewing her for the book. I was telling her about my struggles of getting buy-in from my immediate family about this book. And she was like, maybe you should get a therapist to like mediate. And I tried that, but it didn't work. So I just ended up trying to dodge all the landmines. I didn't want to drag everybody through the mud. And in the end, I was censored slightly from talking about the worst moments, of others, not from my own. I definitely address those. But overall, I think the morals of the story and the crux of the conflict and resolution came through. And that's what I wanted to share. Like, it's not just my story, it's my family's story, and how we evolved and how we were able to cope with our new circumstances. And I think that comes through. And I actually think it's pretty beautiful. So I'm really proud of it.
I love that.
My mom wrote the foreword, and she was like, basically like, I don't agree with most of the stuff in this story, but I think it's a compelling memoir, which is really nice to get her to write that. And she said she's going to throw me the launch party and have a sign up like, nothing that was written about me is true.
It speaks volumes of your relationship with your mom to have written a story that includes her in it, in addition to other family members, and to have her still be willing to write a forward for it and endorse it. Like, that is not an easy feat. Yeah. So kudos for that one.
Yeah. She's a great person, a great mom. I'm really thankful. But yeah, it was not easy going through this. And there were times where I just wanted to give up. And I'm really thankful of Malka, my editor, for being my cheerleader and therapist. And what was the other one? Strategist.
Yep.
And your book that gave me those 3 terms for something I need for, this process, really.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, there's so many things. There's like a couple paths I want to like go down, like staking along the side of like family. You've mentioned it, like you dropped a couple of breadcrumbs around kind of the divorce and being like at a pivotal moment when you were 8. And so I'm curious, because you do talk a lot about it in the book. Like, did you ever see that movie, Sliding Doors, with Gwyneth Paltrow?
Yes, absolutely. I think about that all the time. Like, what, like these little things, or the butterfly effect, right? Like something that changed the course of your life. Who would you have been? Right. And, my friend, who's also a major character in the book, I call her Adrena, but you can read in the acknowledgments, her name is Adrian. She's always like, I wonder what it would have been like if you were still my neighbor across the street, like, and your parents never got divorced, and who would you have been? And I definitely think I would have not gotten into as much trouble. I mean, most of the troublemaking was from being angry and acting out for attention. But I also think that, going through the bullying, of having that socioeconomic downgrade and not feeling confident about my wardrobe and, like that hypersensitivity of my status, that opened my eyes. It helped me look around. And my friend, Bahija, who I talked about earlier, who also suffered immense abuse from her family, and her home was like a war zone. She has her own book that she's writing, which is a spin on Black Girl Magic. It's called Black Girl Tragic. But she was just 4 doors down from me, and I had no idea what was going on in that house. So, in retrospect, I had a charmed life, like a really good childhood compared to most. But at the time I couldn't see it. And looking back, I feel like that was awesome that I got that exposure, because I was able to, get the nerve to fight for others once I, realized it wasn't that bad. Once I realized how awful it was to be bullied, I wanted to stand up for others who were being bullied. And not all of my fights were for, heroic, noble arguments. And I probably could have used words to diffuse some of them. But at the time, I just didn't have the vocabulary or the maturity to handle it. So.
And were you on like the receiving end of being bullied and then also kind of protecting friends around you from being bullied?
Yeah. So that's how it started out. when I first met Bahija, she was 2 years older than me, and I was being bullied at school, and she would walk me all the way to Langston Hughes intermediate school and then backtrack to her high school because she was older, because she didn't want me to get beat up. She was like, you're an awkward, skinny white girl, and it's going to happen. So she was like, and her standing up for me made me, it was like passing the baton of heroism and wanting to stand up for other people. So
I love that. And I would
inspiring. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
No, go for it.
And my mother also, when I was getting bullied, was like, I can tell you a story about when I was being bullied, or I stood up for somebody else and they wanted to beat me up at the playground, and ambulances came and I defended myself, and she told me how she just like used everything she had, kicking and punching and scratching. And I was like, if she can defend herself against 10 bullies, I can certainly do it against one. So there's a progression there, as well as how I was how that transformation took place.
Yeah. And I think that answers another question that I was going to kind of go down of, is that there is a theme of advocacy in the book. Yeah. So I don't want to make an assumption here, but is part of that because of this experience that you're talking about?
It's partially because of that. But I found Bob Simon's story. He had 4 Jewish grandparents and was he thought he was a second-class citizen for most of his young life. So his story was really inspiring to me. And I believe that he created Reston as a place that no one would have to feel marginalized. And I would have loved to have written a book like Madeleine Albright's Fascism, or Naomi Klein's Doppelganger, that dives deep into the history of the Holocaust and this Israeli conundrum that we're in now. That's been going on since before I was born. But I'm not a journalist or historian, and they say to write what you know. So I just talked about how it made me feel, which is why I got so emotional in my reading. That Holocaust it will always be a trigger to me, and I feel like as a country and the world is headed down the wrong path right now. So again, it was trying to write a book that was going to change the world for the better and make it a better place for my kids without lecturing, and instead just talking about my own experiences and how I think, how I think the world should be, and avoid ethnocentrism and seeking out places where not everybody looks like you, which is one of the worst mistakes I've made when I moved to what I call Maplewood in the book. But that was the biggest mistake of my life, I think. It was good to escape it.
Yeah. Wow. I love, that's, I think the beauty, there's so many beautiful things about books. I could list 100 reasons, but I think there's a beauty to memoirs in particular, because you don't have to be an expert on anything. It is just your stories, your reflections of those stories, and your opinions on the things that orbit those stories. And there's something beautiful about that, because you don't have to be some political talking head to still make points that are going to be valid, and somebody's going to pick up and be like, wow, I didn't think of it that way. Or, wow, I'm watching Ellen's transformation from being this child who's being bullied to being this person who's an advocate for other people. Like there's a power in that. And people don't have to know how they're going to get from A to B. They just need to see your story and feel inspired that, all right, if Ellen did it,
right,
I can do it too. And I think there's something really relatable about that.
I agree. And not just in, the things that I did in my life and in the book, but write a book, right? Like everybody has a story. And I think, I hope that it inspires people to look inside themselves with reflection and maybe put something out there in the world so that other people won't feel alone, because we are all connected. It is insane.
Mm-hmm. I know. If we could just focus on more of that we are all interconnected, the world would be even a hair better of a place than it currently is. I feel like we could take any win right now.
Yeah, exactly.
But at least we're collaborating and we're putting your good work into the world. And so that makes me happy, because I feel like we're doing our part in helping try to raise the consciousness and awareness around certain topics. So I love that.
Well, thank you for being a purpose generating business, because I certainly found mine through your company. So
Thank you for saying that.
Yeah.
As we're closing, I want to just kind of highlight, call out that your book is available on your website currently. So it's ellenrbsmith.com. It's rolling across the bottom of the screen. They can scroll down, they can pre-order paperback, hardcover, whatever they want to do. But I also want to plant the seed for people to use your book for book club purposes, because I think because you talk about so many different topics in here, that it's like such a rich book for a book club discussion. So if anyone is interested in pre-ordering the book, talking to you, they have all of your contact information, everything on your website, correct?
Yes. And I love book clubs. I was in one for 10 years in Reston with my mom and my sister, and we had the best time. It was so eye-opening to have such diverse perspectives of what we were reading and which characters we identified with. So I would love to hear who everyone identifies with and what they think.
Yes. Oh, that's always a fun takeaway as then you're like, I told you so. Like I knew it was, especially when it's your own story that people are talking about.
Right. Yeah.
It's so good. Do you have any final thoughts? So your book will be available in late summer. So we're, just a couple of months out from it being fully available on all the different online platforms. For now, it's available through your website specifically, but any final thoughts or parting things?
I don't think so. I feel like I've heard that it should be a good summer read, but there's definitely some serious topics in there. And I want to forewarn people that initially I had like a trigger warning, Nazis and white supremacists are not going to like this book, but maybe they'll pick it up and become better people. I don't know.
Hey, it's a good goal, because you never know.
Right?
Thank you for your time today, Ellen. This was a wonderful conversation. I cannot wait until the book is actually in the hands of all of the readers, and so it can be on the bookshelf behind me. So we're inching to the deadlines here, so I'm excited about that. All right. Thank you so much. And for those watching, I will be back for another conversation with someone else in the near future. But for now, go support Ellen and check out all of her things, and reach out if you have any ideas for her.
Yes, please.
Thanks, Ellen.
All right.